أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يوم تشهد عليهم ألسنتهم وأيديهم وأرجلهم بما كانوا يعملون صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Continuing with the tafsir of Surah Noor, we recited verse number 24, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, after having addressed those issues which we discussed thus far, says, on the day when witness shall be given against them by their tongues, their hands, and their feet concerning what they used to do. We see that this is a concept which has appeared before in other places in Quran as well. And we read in Surah Fussilat, verse number 20, it says, حَتَّى إِذَا مَا جَاءُوهَا شَهِدَ عَلَيْهِمْ سَمْعُهُمْ وَأَبْصَارُهُمْ وَجُلُودُهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Similar ayat is also repeated in Surah Yasin, verse number 65, when it says, الْيَوْمَ نَخْتِمُ عَلَىٰ أَفْوَاهِهِمْ وَتُكَلِّمُنَا أَيْدِيهِمْ وَتَشْهَدُ أَرْجُلُهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. All of which are referencing towards the same phenomena, that these organs and these body parts will be bearing witness and testifying against us on the Day of Judgment. Now, if you utilize them properly, they will not be testifying against you. They'll be testifying for you and in your support. They will not. It's not necessarily that it will always be in a negative tone. If you have done good and used them properly, they will be in the supporting. So we see that since when testifying, one must testify against another, so there's another individual, hence we can understand that the essence or quintessence of insan is separate from its bodily parts, and that's why they are bearing witness against him. Witness and the witnessee, the one who's witnessing, shahid and mashhud, are two separate entities which are being discussed over here. So therefore, they're different from one another. So we understand that yes, there is this body that Allah has created for us, and then there's this essence, the soul that He has created for us, and they're two separate entities on their own. And so we see that the messages that we learn from this ayah is that in the court of Allah, mankind is not even the owner of his own body parts. Here you might think that you're the owner of all of the things that you have, but over there you're not the owner of your body parts. Why? Because if you were the owner, they would be listening to you. They will not be testifying against you. They would be your mamluk, they would be your abd, and they would be listening to you. But over here it's the case against. They're testifying against you. That shows you that they're not your milkiyat, they're not your property, and that's why they are testifying against you. So here, there's an important discussion about organ donation that we left off last night. So many of us question why Sharia doesn't allow us to, donate the organs. First of all, this is not entirely true. So there has been misconceptions about it, so it's not entirely true. We can donate some parts of our body, given that it doesn't put us in a harmful situation. But many have questions about donating parts after their death. What is the purpose of keeping them when I don't need them? When everything will perish under the sand, under my grave, I might as well give it to someone who's alive and can utilize it. So these are all genuine questions. Let's answer them one at a time, and inshallah we'll see how far we can get to. Sharia does allow us to donate during our life as well as after the death with certain conditions. So I'll mention those conditions, and we'll mention what is it that we are allowed to donate and what is it that we're not allowed to donate. For example, one can donate those parts of the body which are impaired. Help anyone regardless of their religion or faith, wherever they come from. You can go ahead and donate as long as it does not entail any harm to you. So today, if Allah has given me 2 healthy kidneys, I can go ahead and donate the other one to anyone, regardless of their faith, religion, background, whatever the case might be. Sharia does not stop me from going ahead and doing this act of, virtue. In fact, it's a fadilat to go ahead and do such an act. Secondly, common example that I gave of kidney and all the other things that are impaired that you can give out, which does not entail any sort of harm to yourself, because you cannot put yourself into halakat to go ahead and save someone else. That is not allowed. So as long as it does not put you in any serious difficulty, then you're allowed to go ahead and give. So question is donating an organ by a living person to another living person or by a dead person by virtue of his will to a living person permissible? What would the ruling be different if it were a Muslim to a non-Muslim, or vice versa? Is the ruling, for certain organs there's exclusion or not? What is the case? When this question was posed, it said, according to Ayatollah Sistani, as far as donating an organ by a living person to another person is concerned, there's no problem in it, as we said before, as long as it does not entail any serious harm to the donor. For example, donating a kidney or other, items which you can, does not cause any serious harm to you. As far as removing an organ by a deceased as directed in his will, for example, for the purpose of transplanting it into another living person is concerned, there's no problem in it as long as these two conditions are fulfilled. This is according to Ayatollah Sistani. He says the deceased was not a Muslim or someone who is considered a Muslim. So if it was non-Muslim, you can go ahead and remove their body parts and you can use them wherever you want to. Secondly, life of another Muslim was depending on this such transplantation. So this is based on the criteria of Ayatollah Sistani. So what does he say? He puts two conditions upon it. He said you can donate during your life however you want to, as long as it does not put you in serious harm. After death, if you had given a will, if there's a will that you have written out, there's a wasiyat that go ahead and take my body parts after I die, he says this will can only be executed if that person was a non-Muslim, so you can go ahead and execute his will, or if that person was a Muslim, the person who's willing or writing this wasiyah, and another Muslim's body or another Muslim who's alive was in need of that organ. So if I was dying, I left a will that take my body parts, and after my death, if another Muslim's body or another Muslim is in need of such organs, only then, according to the criteria of Ayatollah Sistani, you're allowed to go ahead and do so. But we see that people quote different ayat from Quran. For example, this ayat from Surah Maida, verse number 22, is normally quoted. It says, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. And whoever saves a life is as though he had saved all of mankind. Now this ayat has nothing to do with this fiqh law. You can go ahead and say, well, Allah is telling us to go ahead and save a life. Why is it that our faqih, our jurisprudential laws are stopping us from doing so or putting certain conditions upon it? From what we gather, that there actually is differences of opinion by different maraji. Not all of the maraji have similar opinion in this. And that's why the beauty of ijtihad comes into play, that, they're not masoom, so they will be having differences of opinion. When Imam Khomeini gave this fatwa 30 years ago, he gave permission to go ahead and donate, as long as there's a will, obviously, to anyone you want to, even after the death. That's his fatwa. And that still stands forever for those who are his followers. That was his research, that was his fatwa, that's what he gave out. When Ayatollah Khamenei, his taqleed began, he said that he added some conditions to it. So obviously majority are the followers of either, Ayatollah Khamenei or Ayatollah Sistani, or is still in the taqleed of Imam Khomeini or Sayyid Khouei. So that's why I'm discussing only their perspective over here. And others also have pretty much similar perspective to these two perspectives. So Imam Khomeini said there was no problem at all, anyone, as long as there was a will. Ayatollah Khamenei says if a person has left a will and respected soul is in need, dependent upon it, it is not a problem. So he added one condition. Only in the case of need. Respected soul mean insan. Does not say only mu'mineen and muslimin. No, any human being is considered to be nafs muhtarama. It's a respected soul. So he says as long as this person has left a will and someone is in need, if this criteria is not fulfilled, then according to him, you're not allowed to go do it. Ayatollah Sistani went ahead a little bit extra. He said deceased must have left a will, must be Muslim's life that's depending on it, and it must be in need, and only then you can go ahead and execute it. So you see how these three have slight difference between the three. So if you put together the differences that are there, one says you can go ahead and donate whatever you want to. Obviously there has to be a will. Even in this part of the society, if you don't put it, mark it or sign it behind your, licenses or wherever it is, they're not going to take anything out unless you have willed it. So will has to be important. Will has to be executed. It has to be said from before. You must have that intention from before in order for that to take place. But if you haven't willed about it, you haven't written it in your will, then obviously it's not going to take place. Once you have written a will about it, then these are the three criteria that we have in front of us. Three criterion that we have in front of us. One, I'll repeat it. Imam Khomeini says you can donate whatever you want to whoever you want to. Ayatollah Khamenei adds that only in the case of need you can go ahead and donate. Ayatollah Sistani adds the condition of Muslim. If a Muslim's life was in need, then only you can go ahead and donate. So, body of a Muslim or mu'min is respected. One of the reasons that we see as to why Ayatollah Sistani holds back a little bit. Why is he not giving the permission as the other Maraja are given? So he says, body of Muslims and mu'min is respected as he was alive after the death. So the body must be dealt with respect. So for example, today you and I, alhamdulillah, we're alive in a sense that we're alive, we're breathing. So you're not going to go ahead and take someone's body part without their will. You'll definitely seek their permission. You're not going to just force someone and then take something out of them, cut their arm or amputate or whatever. No, that is something which will be, they'll put you in the jail for that. So you will need someone's permission to go ahead and do that. It's kind of like you need to have that permission after the death of the individual. So that's where the will part comes into play. So there are manners and etiquettes of ghusl, given the ghusl and the burial of a deceased. Autopsy, is not permissible unless it was absolutely needed. Therefore, tampering with one's body with a will, if it's not for a just cause, is not permissible according to the popular verdict. But you have options available. Some of the Maraji do give the permission. You can go ahead and refer to them in certain matters. And therefore, all in all, in conclusion, some have given permission. In fact, everybody has given permission, but some have some of the reservations as far as the organ donation is concerned. Salawat Biji Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Second point that we derive from it is the one who bears witness must have sense of what it is testifying for. So remember the ayat. The ayat was saying that these body parts will be testifying on the Day of Judgment. So these body parts, they have sense of understanding of what we are doing. And that's why they will be testifying. Imagine you don't bring in the court of the law someone who is insane. So you bring someone who has sanity and is able to prove and is able to testify. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in other words is telling us the same thing, that these body parts of yours, they have sense, and we do not know on that day they will be witnesses for every act that we do and every word that we utter. So you got to be careful things that you do, and you got to be careful from the things that you have said. Verse number 25 says, يَوْمَ إِذٍ يُوَفِّيهِمُ اللَّهُ دِينَهُمُ الْحَقِّ وَيَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ الْحَقُّ الْمُبِينَ. It says, on that day, Allah will pay them in full their due recompense, and they shall know that Allah is the manifest reality. Points in this ayah is that the word deen has been used in Quran for various different meanings. We recite Surah Fatiha, Maliki Yawmuddin. So Yawmuddin over there is referring to not the religion, it's referring to the Day of Judgment. So the word deen literally means the religion, Sharia, that's what it means. So over here it could mean both, that if it means deen, it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be, making it to be a reality for everyone on the Day of Judgment, that what this deen is. The real deen is the one that I chose for you. Or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be compensating these people on the Day of Judgment because of the limitations in this world. And I want just a little bit of attention over here. That because of the limitations in this world that we have to give complete and adequate compensation, a lot of crimes that are committed, no matter how many years in jail, you hear some of these punishments, 399 years of jail. yeah, person is sentenced for 399 years, but he's never going to go ahead and live for that long. Or the maximum punishment, for example, a person goes out, bombs the whole city, kills millions of people, and many are still suffering for that. One person's act. What is the worst punishment that you can give him? Capital punishment. You know, you hang this guy or you kill this guy, that's it. He's executed. Does that justify, does this compensation for taking the life of millions of people justify taking this person's life? Not really. So this world sometimes is not adequate for the full compensation. Likewise, when the criminals cannot be compensated fully in this world, good doers cannot be compensated in this world either. For your good actions, you might not get complete compensation over here. That's why there's a place that is awaiting for you. And that's why we keep on giving this, glad tiding that there are these things waiting for you over there. And to draw your attention closer to it, Allah gives example, Jannatin tajri min tahti al-anhar. There will be paradises beneath which there will be rivers flowing. So that humankind understands that this is the best, life. If you and I, this is a, vacation spot for us, right? A place where there's, rivers flowing and then so on and so forth. That's a vacation spot for us. So when you think of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is just trying to draw for taqarrub al-zahni, to bring your mind closer to it so you understand what to expect. But what to expect over there is completely different phenomena. And therefore, you cannot get full compensation for your good acts as well as for the evil acts. As far as the evil acts are concerned, this legal system of ours cannot give maximum punishment to anyone. But in Qiyamah, this person will get this maximum punishment. As Surah Nisa, verse number 56 points, it says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِنَا سَوْفَ نُصْلِيهِمْ نَارًا كُلَّمَا نَضَجَتْ جُلُودُهُمْ بَدَّلْنَاهُ جُلُودًا غَيْرَهَا لِيَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابَ. Says what? Indeed, we shall soon make those who deny our signs enter a fire. As often as their skin becomes scorched, we shall replace them with other skins so that they may taste the punishment. It's going to keep on replacing. If you're burned once, it's like, okay, my adhab is over with. No, it's not over. You're given this skin back again, and then it is burnt again. You feel the scorching heat, and then it is given again and over and over and over again. This is how you are really compensated. Hopefully none of us are compensated that way, but this is how the criminals will be compensated on the Day of Judgment. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad. So the messages that we learn from this particular ayah is that only in Qiyamah we are given proper compensation. Punishment on that day by Allah is based on testimony of body parts. He's not just going to go ahead and throw everyone in. No, there will be testimony. So you see that what you have done and what you have said. And I always mention this, that when this verse from Surah Zilzal was revealed, وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرٍ يَرَهُ وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. That anyone who has done atom worth of good thing will be able to see it. Anyone who has done atom worth of bad thing, evil, will be able to see it. Many of the mufassirin from early years, or in fact mufassirin if you go back 100 years or 200 years, they were unable to do the tafsir of yara. That how will they be shown? Because there was no concept of TV or camera or any of those things. But today, with all these technologies that we have in our hands, things are recorded, and then DVRs and all that stuff that we have, we repeat and rewind and we watch and all over again, and shown on large screen HD quality TV, that will be over there. Beyond that imagination of ours. So these things will be there. That's why now they're able to translate. Yes, whoever does atom worth of good deed will be shown. You'll be seeing it. And anyone who has done atom worth of evil deed will be also shown on a large screen TV over there. So over here, punishment is based on what? Punishment is based on the testimony of these organs, these body parts. So there will be testimony. Without testimony, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to punish anyone. Thirdly, Allah will not decrease the punishment of anyone. Fourth, on the Day of Judgment, when the veils of negligence, pride, ignorance, false propagation, and filthy desires are lifted, people will see the reality, as this ayat was mentioning. The next ayah, verse number 26 says, Al-khabithatu للخبيثين والخبيثون للخبيثات والطيبات للطيبين والطيبون للطيبات أولئك مبرؤون مما يقولون لهم مغفرة ورزق كريم. It says, vicious women are for vicious men, and vicious men are for vicious women. Good women are for good men, and good men are for good women. These are absolved of what they say about them. For them is forgiveness and a noble provision. It's an interesting ayah. All of these ayat are very interesting and requires in-depth analysis of it. But because of lack of time we have, we're just focusing very little on each ayah just to give enough about it, and then we can move forward. That the points that we derive is that this is mentioned as a rule of thumb. It sets the standards when choosing a spouse. Our selection must be based on faith and chastity and not on external beauty or wealth or anything like that. So this is the criteria which is being mentioned in this verse of Surah Noor, verse number 26. What is the criteria of choosing a spouse? This is the criteria right here. Here we run into a question about the marriage of Prophet Lut and Prophet Noor. Why did they marry such women? Quran says, "Udkhul an-nar ma'ad-dakhilin," enter the fire with those who are going to be sent to the fire. And also, if Asiya, wife of Fir'aun, was a righteous woman, why did she marry Fir'aun? This question arises. If evil are for evil only, and vicious are for vicious only, and good are for good only, then who could be better than Hazrat Nuh and Hazrat Lut? They were prophets, they were masoom. They would not make any misjudgments or choose a wrong spouse. Or Asiya, Hazrat Asiya, who has a place, Prophet, we were talking about Hazrat Khadija the other day, and the majlis, we said 4 women of the paradise. Among them is Hazrat Asiya as well. Why did she marry a person like Fir'aun, who's saying, Ana Rabbukumul Ala, and so on and so forth? God has told the disbelievers, Surah Tahrim, verse number 10 says, the story of the wives of Noah and Lot as a parable. They were married to 2 of our righteous servants, but were unfaithful to them. Nothing could protect them from the wrath of God, and they were told to enter fire with the others. Surah Tahrim, verse number 10. Here it's obvious that these 2 wives were not unfaithful from the point of illegal relationship as this ayat is talking about, or as the previous verses of chapter Surah Noor we have been discussing. The concept of adultery and all that has been discussed. So they were not unfaithful from that aspect, having illegal relationship or something. Rather, they spied against their husbands and worked in favor of the unbelievers. That was the reason for why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ordering them to enter the hellfire. Whereas the wife of Fir'aun didn't accept Prophet Musa at the time she was married to Fir'aun. When she got married to Fir'aun, Hazrat Musa was not even there. So she married, she wasn't in this religion. But when Hazrat Musa did present the religion and the faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right away she distanced herself. And so we see that, it's not that they had done a mistake initially. No, it was not a mistake by these. So therefore we see this verse of Surah Noor 26 doesn't mean that if a man or woman was good, they must naturally have a good spouse as well. No, and only then will result in forgiveness and noble provision, as mentioned in this verse of Surah Noor. Quran considers the criteria for entering the paradise to be faithful and have piety and perform good deeds. Hence, although Prophet Nuh and Prophet Lut had vicious wives who will enter hell, doesn't affect the noble prophets themselves. So here, couple of points are discussed. So let me just recap. I'm running out of my time. That first, we talked about the concept of organ donation. I'm sure everybody is clear on that as far as the popular verdicts are concerned. Secondly, we talked about the concept where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning the azab and the compensation on the Day of Judgment, which cannot be compensated over here because of the limitations of this world. And thirdly, the criteria of a spouse is being mentioned in the ayat number 26. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to be able to follow these teachings of Quran as well as the commands of Masumeen alayhimu salatu wasalam. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the zuhur of our weighted Imam and make us among the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhir dawana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.